Welcome to the Rebel Love Show, where we are pro-pot, pro-gun, and pro-coffee. You can find all of our content at rebelloveshow.com, facebook.com/rebelloveshow, and you can look at all of our beautiful faces at youtube.com/rebelloveshow. I am Rob Mathias.
And I'm Joel Valenzuela.
And today we have someone here in our studio by the name of Chase Rachels, the co-founder of none other than the Blue Ridge Liberty Project, who happens to be now sitting in the capital of the Free State Project. Is this the capital? Is this the mecca of it? I don't even know anymore.
Is it the Free State Project headquarters? I'm sorry. I had to throw that one out there.
Yeah, it did.
So, welcome to the
Chase,
show.
welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, guys. It's really great to be here, and thank you for having me.
So, let's just jump into it. I want to know, why did you found the Blue Ridge Liberty Project?
Well, there's really many reasons. We saw that there are a lot of people out there who wanted an alternative to the FSP, wanted some more variety. We also wanted to create a project whose mission was a little bit more focused, more narrow. Like here, it's kind of like a liberty catch-all, which is cool. It's a kind of gets a whole large swath of people who want more liberty, less government. But we wanted something very specifically voluntarist and peaceful parenting oriented. So we thought, well, hey, let's go ahead and make this somewhere like Asheville, North Carolina, which we saw to have a great culture that's conducive to those interests. Very natural, holistic people, very free-thinking, open-minded people. And really, I still do very much like Asheville a lot. It's probably one of my favorite places in America, to be honest. And we just took it from there. And since then, the project's done pretty well. It's had its up and downs, but I think it's going to be probably the Free State Project's biggest contender in the coming future.
Yeah, now, you talk about the whole strict voluntarist and peaceful parenting,
Mhm.
etc. What is it about here that isn't sort of good enough for that? Or what is it about being exclusive, more exclusive, that makes your goals stronger? I mean, for example, one big tenet of liberty is live and let live. We're all different. We all do different things.
Yep.
And as long as we're not hurting each other, we are free to live as we please. Now, the whole idea of trying to sort of exclude or try to have one place where it's all like that, all like one kind of strain of that, where's the thinking of that come in?
Well, we have to understand, what is a voluntarist? You have to define what that means.
By the way, I like the fact that you use voluntarist and not voluntarist. That pisses the hell out of me. It's like, there's too many goddamn syllables when people say that.
Yeah, no problem. So we got to think, what does voluntarist mean? It's literally someone who believes in the non-aggression principle and believes in private property rights. And a person who has those beliefs is by definition the most tolerant person out there. So insofar as you're not a voluntarist, you are someone who does believe in some instances to initiate force against others in their property. Now, the Blue Ridge Liberty Project isn't about excluding people. It's about trying to maintain the integrity of a philosophy, because we're willing to reach out and participate with and interact with anyone, no matter what their disposition is. It's just before you become an actual member, we want to know that you're someone who is consistently a voluntarist and is not going to be spreading the message, with some exceptions for aggression here, some exceptions for aggression there. We want to make sure the philosophy is intact. So you don't want to exclude anybody. You just want to make sure the philosophy maintains its integrity.
Well, a year ago, the Blue Ridge was somewhat exclusive in the fact that there was a huge war on Facebook about atheists and religious people. You want to touch on that? What really happened down there and why that came to be?
Right, and that honestly has something to do with why I eventually left. And since then, I have to say though, it's they've really reoriented their approach and their outlook on that kind of thing. That's kind of where I wanted to be when I was there. So I'm very optimistic about that change in their philosophy, about being more open-minded and empathetic. But the idea back then was the fact that we started out as a peaceful parenting and voluntarist organization, and now they were trying to incorporate atheism to that as well. I thought that kind of fell outside the scope of what we were doing. I thought that was kind of unnecessary. Maybe like that's something we can talk about in our own time, but it shouldn't be a Blue Ridge focus, But it came to be because, certain religious beliefs have implications that go against non-aggression principle and others don't, but you know, it's in some people's eyes that all like Christians, for example, must believe to some degree that aggression's okay as long as it's, you know, committed by God or his followers at his behest. So because Justin believed that to be a religion that required you to believe in aggression to some degree, that means necessarily you're not a voluntarist.
Well, like for me, like obviously as a volunteer, I don't really care what someone believes in their mind as long as you're not pointing a gun at me or using any kind of violence. I don't really care. And in regards to the whole atheism thing, like I kind of take a non-issue on it in regards to what Blue Ridge was doing back then, because it's your guys' organization.
Right.
And if that organization chooses to be exclusive against people who are not atheist or not, that's their prerogative. If you don't like it, don't move there.
Right. No, and obviously it's the same for us. It's about voluntary association and disassociation. Obviously, we know everyone reserves the right to believe whatever they want to believe. They can believe that unicorns are doing backflips in the air to create the tides coming in and out. It's not that we didn't believe that they had a right to believe something. It's whether or not we thought it was compatible logically with the voluntarist philosophy. And I do think that you do care what other people believe.
Oh, I know.
Because that's why you have a radio show. You want to change the minds of others because you care what they believe.
Well, no, I do care what they believe. I meant that in the way of like, I want people to be peaceful people and I want people to embrace liberty. But when it comes to like a religious aspect of like, you know, what if someone believes in a higher power or not, that doesn't affect me.
Right. And it wasn't the belief in a higher power which was the issue with him. It was the belief that people who believed in this higher power would commit aggression thinking it was justified because it was at his command.
Okay.
Things of like that nature.
Now, there is a sort of, not everyone around here thinks exactly the same way either.
Oh, there's huge difference in opinion here. I mean, hell, there's minarchists in our ranks.
So let me throw this out. Why not move the Blue Ridge Liberty Project here? Still have an exclusive community, so to speak, or just associate with the purists, but be surrounded by a sort of outer wall, outer buffer of non-purists but still friendly people rather than a buffer of hostiles.
No, I understand that, and I do understand that question actually gets brought up a lot. I know Mark Edge asked the same thing many times.
Great minds think alike.
Right, and I think there's two reasons. You know, the first reason is the fact that he wanted there to be a different geographic alternative to the FSP because, honestly, I know it seems trivial to a lot of us, but weather means a lot to people. You know, it does.
Yeah,
and honestly, after being here,
here's the thing: statists love hot weather too.
No, I know.
Yeah.
That's the catch-22. But like when I moved here, and I had a taste of the New Hampshire winter.
It was a horrible winter.
It was a much bigger factor to me than I thought it was going to be prior to moving. I was like, yeah, it'd be cold, but you know, it's worth it. But I still think it is worth it to in a lot of ways. But wow.
Well, let me throw it out there that I probably come from the hottest place of anywhere in this room. Okay, yeah, here we go. I come from Arizona with 120 degree summers and stuff, and I love the winter. It's great. I'm sorry it's over.
No. I spent 30 years of winter. Look, I love living here for the Liberty community. I wouldn't change a thing. I would come here in a heartbeat. I don't regret the decision moving. That being said, I hate cold. I hate winter. I've spent 30 years of cold. I came from Chicago where it's just as cold, and this was by far the worst winter I've ever experienced in my life. I can't stand it. Thank God. There's leaves out on the trees.
Yeah,
there's like
it's
it got
nice
to the
out.
60s.
I will admit that. However, let me just say, snowstorm beats dust storm.
Okay, but you that's one winter. You're like in this wonderland, like, oh my God, there's snow, and I'm driving in it. Like, no, wait 30 years from now.
I wouldn't call it
it
driving. It's like snow surfing because it's not just driving. It's like slip and slide. So we got off on a little tangent about the weather, but
here's the second option I was talking about, and this is the more important factor why we didn't do it here and did there instead. It's the culture that's already instilled there, like. Outside of the Free State Project, and I do make that stipulation on purpose because people in the Free State Project are very open-minded and free-thinking and peaceful people.
Yeah.
But outside of the Free State Project here, people are a lot less open-minded and a lot less holistic and more rude and loud and aggressive than they are in Asheville, which is a very, very peaceful place. People are very happy, relaxed. I mean, it's known for being like a big hippie town, you know, and even though they don't all believe in all the stuff we do, they're at least receptive to hearing about ideas that don't fall inside the conventional orthodox. You know.
Yeah, I get that. It's New Hampshire has been known as sort of rednecky and closed off. I know there's a certain nameless member of this community who said specifically that he wanted to move back to California because he couldn't stand. He was trying to take a picture for Calendar, which is drag queens and covered bridges.
Okay.
Don't worry, he'll be on the show.
Up
at
in the
some
north,
point.
yeah. And the owner of the covered bridge denied permission because he says he did not want that kind of indecency on his property.
Oh wow, that's messed up.
And there's that kind of vibe over there. But so you were all in the Blue Ridge, right?
Right,
For
right.
very good reasons. And as
Yes.
someone who I believe in market competition, right? I believe there should be both. Why not both? Why not all over the place?
I agree with that.
But yet you're here. Why are you here?
I just also want to add like the fact that you're here. Like no one, whenever someone moves here, no one's going to ever go through the decision you made because you left a project that you helped create.
Right.
And that's something that none of us will ever make that decision. The thousands of people that will move here will never have to make the decision to leave a project that they create, unless there's a bunch of other projects that are going to start up and then they're like, oh, I'm going to move here. Like
Right.
You're a very unique mover in the fact that you're the only one to really make that decision. Well, not the two of you, is to really make that decision to move after you founded a competing.
Except
project.
maybe the few holdouts of Free State Wyoming.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
they're
but
like,
they haven't
screw
moved,
this.
But
We're
they
done.
haven't moved. They're still, in their bunkers in Wyoming.
So here's the biggest reasons, and this probably isn't any secret by now. When the Blue Ridge started, it didn't start off with as such of an anti-religious theme as it ended up having in the future. And we were really attracting a lot of people. We probably had up to a couple dozen, almost 30 members at its peak. It was becoming a really good thing. But as the anti-religious stuff started taking more and more of a precedence, other people in the group didn't like being misrepresented because they didn't feel the same way that some of the things in the project page were being posted as, or people just assume that just because Justin said it, that's a Blue Ridge project thing, because like maybe he represents everyone's views in it, which is not true. So a lot of people got upset and they left. They're disenfranchised, disillusioned about it. And for the longest time, I spoke out against. I said, you know what? I sympathize with most of your points on here because I agree with a lot of them. I just think it falls outside the scope of what we're trying to do here. And I think it's hurting more than helping. I think it's alienating too many people. And we got to just back off the religious thing and focus on the volunteerism thing and peaceful parenting thing. And that's already exclusive enough.
It's very niche as it is.
Sure. And, at first there was some resistance to that. And, I can understand that because you're still trying to figure out, I don't want to compromise my principles, but at the same time, I want to create a large and healthy community here that's not defined by, hate and just pointing out the negative and everything else, but embracing the positive that we have. So I left and I came here, and the good news is that Justin has really taken that to heart, as well as, anyone else in the group who was thinking that way. And they've really turned a positive direction. They're much more empathetic now, much more open-minded, much more willing to, let other people in and participate with other people on like-minded things. So it's really taken a positive turn, and because of that, it is growing again. So it's pretty exciting.
What are the numbers like down there?
I think right now they probably have around, around 20 solid members or so, but they're really connected to a lot of different organizations there too, like the actual normal organization. It's like the weed lobbyist organization,
yeah.
like trying to get it legalized. The libertarian community there, the Tea Partiers there, I know they're a part of. I know we participate with the Veterans for Peace while we were there. They're more socialist leaning, but they're obviously very anti-war. So it's just cool because there's a lot of activism that goes on there as it is. So there's a lot of people who have passion enough to actually go out and do something about their beliefs, not just sit around apathetically watching their TV,
Yeah.
Let me talk haters for a little bit, okay? Because the Free State Project has its haters, number one being Representative Cynthia Chase out of Keene. And
She's running again,
I know she was the reason I moved out. when it happened, when she said that Free Staters are the greatest threat to what she believes her vision of New Hampshire was, and she would do anything to limit our freedoms here to convince us not to come out, that was when I said, I got to move. Just today it broke. She's involved with some secret Our State project.
Yeah, I saw Ian
organization that's specifically created to counter for the Free State Project.
Interesting.
And so now it's full circle now. Now I came because of this crazy woman, and then now that I'm entrenched here and doing good stuff, now it's round two. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And what about the Blue Ridge? What are the haters like for that project?
Well, see, that's one of the unique things about the Blue Ridge is that we don't conduct a lot of the same type of activism we do here as far as like the cop blocking is concerned, or the other kind of like in-your-face public official stuff is concerned. It's more focused towards outreach, education, agorism, promoting the peaceful parenting stuff. So we don't really create many quote-unquote enemies doing that. Now, whether or not it's overall more effective at spreading the word, I don't know, but for that reason, we don't have many like our only enemies probably exist within the libertarian community who are just pretty raw about the anti-religious stuff in the past, which has since changed anyways. So
yeah, well, that's because here in the FSP there are people, even anarchists, that participate in elections and whatnot, and I don't know if that's a whole nother philosophical conversation whether or not they actually are anarchists participating within the system. But on top of that, you're right, a lot of people here are very confrontational in regards to liberty activism, especially with cop blocking, with 420 rallies and all that jazz. It's pretty much more, there's a lot of civil disobedience, especially in the heyday of Keene, where a lot of enemies were made because we literally, got in people's faces a lot.
Well, like the guest of the last episode right before you came on, he had just gotten out of jail. So there we go. So there's definitely a more raucous vibe over here a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Now, about the whole violence, man, what is I wouldn't say the Blue Ridge position, but the position a lot of people in the Blue Ridge Liberty Project of defensive use of force.
Are they on Ian Freeman's side or Chris Cantwell's side?
Oh, I don't know what their sides are, but I can say that
Take a bullet or cap a postman.
I can say that obviously
Postman.
we're all libertarians, right? And part of being a libertarian, that kind of implies that you believe in private property rights and non-aggression. And part of those private property rights are private property rights over your own body. And having private property rights means you have the right to defend those rights. So if someone's aggressing against you, all libertarians and voluntarists believe you can ethically use self-defense to kind of prevent that harm or to mitigate it. Now, that is the ethical question. There's nothing ethically wrong about defending yourself no matter what.
No, I completely agree with that.
But what's the practical consequence of shooting a cop coming at you or shooting just, a mugger?
My question is, where's your line in the sand?
What do you mean?
Well, everyone has their own line in the sand in regards to where they would use self-defense, all the way up to killing another person.
Oh, okay.
All right. Including a cop or any government official or whatnot.
Or a rabid dog.
Yeah. What's your line in the sand? Where would you use force to defend yourself or your family?
If I felt, well, it'd probably be higher for me than my family because I'm willing to take more risk with my life than with theirs. But if it was with me, I wouldn't use deadly force against someone unless I felt like my life was imminently threatened, like it was going to probably end if I don't do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I don't care who's using the force, whether it's a cop or an FBI agent or a mugger.
Well, what if it wasn't your life ending? It's just that you're going to be in a cage for the next 40 years, 50 years.
That sounds like a life ending to me.
Me too.
Yeah. What do you mean, like
Well,
I'm getting arrested
yeah.
for 40 or 50 years?
Yeah.
Well,
if you knew that was going to be the case.
yeah, I'd probably...
I'm saying, like, if I get pulled over for a traffic violation, I'm not going to kill a cop. I'll just take I might fight it in court and do what I can in court to fight it, but I'm not going to kill a cop
Yeah,
over
if
something
it's
like
40
that.
or 50 years, I'd probably use force. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess
So would I.
I guess if it comes to my life, my personal view on my life is it's just borrowed time. It's not like this precious thing to be preserved. No, we all die. I could die tomorrow for all we know.
Well, I'm trying to live as if I'm going to die tomorrow.
Exactly. And so if it's like 40, 50 years, that's my life's work is gone, basically. And so I'd rather take a risk than do the assuredness of having my life work wasted. And basically, for the most part, though, is it going to be effective? Is it going to be the most useful thing there is in the current situation? Now, on that sort of note, we're talking a lot about violence today, right?
Well, that's because it came up into the news. I mean, the fact that Larkin Rose and Josie Willis came out in support of Chris Cantwell attacking the FSP board and president today.
Yeah, that's kind of rough. I try to avoid that divisiveness, but
it's a subject of the conversation. It's out there in the libertarian sphere of what is on Facebook, which is, let's be honest, is the world of libertarian critique.
Now, beyond hypothetically,
Facebook-centric.
Obviously, hypothetically, we're in favor of, for example, firearm ownership, etc. What about personally? Is that something that you're into? Like,
no, it's something that I want to be into. It's not something I've gotten into, but something I have a very large interest in learning about. I want to be able to defend myself and catch my own food and kill my own food. I have a rifle. Yeah, exactly. I have a rifle. I just haven't learned how to use it yet.
See, I have a mixed feeling on self-sufficiency. I think people should try and be self-sufficient as best they can. But if everyone was self-sufficient, all right, like a lot of things that we take for granted. I mean, this is a hypothetical. If like entire, world society, everyone became self-sufficient, like today, like we wouldn't have Dunkin' Donuts coffee or these mics.
Division of labor, it's called.
Yeah, that wouldn't exist. So, like, I'm all in favor of people being as self-sufficient as they can, but if every single person on the planet did that, there would be no division of labor. You have to make your own goods.
There's 2 points to that. The first point is you're absolutely right. Division of labor is much more productive than everyone, just fending for themselves and self-sufficient. But it's not, when you say I want to be self-sufficient, I'm not saying that I'm going to live that way. I want to have the ability to do that if I need to. And the reason why looking at self-sufficient setups today, like with off-the-grid power in your house or chicken coops, it's not because we want that to be the next economic system, because that's less efficient, but because we want to be able to sustain ourselves during the economic collapse that's coming and until it's over with.
Yeah. Now,
so you're a prepper?
Oh yeah, I would really like to prep, definitely, because it's not a nuclear holocaust we need to concern ourselves with, or China invading.
It's a collapse of society.
It's an economic collapse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, my whole thing on self-sufficiency. Now, pardon the collectivist dialogue for a second here. It's not so much that I need to be self-sufficient. I think we need to be self-sufficient, which is why I'm really down with the Shire Co-op as a way of having the local market.
Well, it's kind of building our own free society type of thing.
Yeah, as long as the free world is self-sufficient, I'm a little bit less worried about myself as an individual. As long as, like, myself and my neighbors and immediate family, as long as we as a we collectively are self-sufficient.
Sure.
That's what I care about.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why probably the best solution is to find people you really, really trust, so you can have some of the benefits of division of labor while at the same time not require as much dependency on outside sources of sustenance. That's probably the best case scenario, but you really have to find people you really trust and you have very complementary skills.
Now,
right?
Did you grow up a city boy or a country boy?
Neither. Suburban.
That's city boy.
Grew up in suburbia.
What suburbia did you grow up in?
Well, I was a military brat, so I grew up all over, anywhere from South Georgia to the coastal Carolinas to Indiana, California. I mean, even sometime in the Philippines. So I'm not really from anywhere. I just
join the club there.
You're from the planet Earth.
Yeah.
The same place as all of us. Well, I grew up on a ranch in the northern Mexican mountains, and we're one of the first compounds, I guess, in the world to have a fully self-sufficient solar energy electrical grid.
Oh, cool.
And so we had I grew up all this stuff that's talked about in this community with raw milk and grass-fed free-range beef and stuff. That was just what was available to me growing up ever since I was a small child. And so I've kind of grown used to the amenities of civilized life.
Oh,
But
good.
it's like at the same time, I'm still like I don't have to wrap my head around these concepts of alternative self-sufficient living because that's what I grew up at.
Well, you're
you
very
know?
fortunate then. That's great.
Yeah.
Most people don't ever experience that. I mean, I experienced, living in a basically poor neighborhood in the suburbs of Chicago for most of my life. So I didn't grow up in different locations. I didn't grow up in on a ranch or anything like that, or experiencing, self-sufficiency.
Well, I think we've already well established which one is the cool one of us two.
No, no, no. I'm cooler than that. Like, I jacked myself out of the Matrix. You kind of never were in it. So
Well, hey,
there's a difference.
untested. You know what I'm saying? Well, I did jack myself out of the boondocks, and I managed to be able to, relate to civilization. Finally, I'm not like Jeremiah Johnson with the big beard and all that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I used to be a neocon. I grew up in a military family. I joined the military myself after high school. I was in there for 4 years. So I think we were all in our unique kind of matrices.
Yeah,
at one
I
point.
used to be a huge neoconservative and supporting the Republicans and all that.
Oh, yeah.
God.
Well, I grew up in a very religious household. Well, my parents.
Well, he was a Mr. Conservative here. He was
Yeah.
in the Bush administration, for God's sake.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was back in '08. I was interning for George W.
Interesting.
And I wear that as a badge of pride.
No, you could say you wore it as a badge of pride like years before. That's too
No.
late in the game.
It still is because it's like I've been there. I know what I'm talking about. A lot of people, just like the ideas of liberty and anarchy and things like that, are so foreign to so many people. To the layperson, the ideas of the highest echelons of government are very foreign. It's like the secret. That's why there's so many damn conspiracy theorists out there, because they have no fucking clue what's going on. They're just like, whoa, Illuminati, a secret triad of like crazy people. It's like they don't know how a government runs at the highest
you
level.
hate
and
the
trickle down.
truthers, man. You can't stand the truther people, the chemtards, as you
Yeah.
call them.
Yeah, like
Why? No, I want to dive into this. Why do you hate the truthers so much? Because I came from the truther movement. I wouldn't have discovered all of this if it wasn't for like Alex Jones. I know that sounds as crazy as it does, all right, but like that set my path. You know what I'm saying? Like philosophically, I got introduced to like Ron Paul
Yeah,
and,
no.
and forward from that movement.
Yeah, I had
So-
Alex Jones face too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a lot of people in this community went through their Alex Jones phase of like, the Illuminati controlling everything in the world type of they came down that rabbit hole.
I
and you
think-
hate them
I
for some
think the
reason.
truther thing is more the byproduct. For example, we're having that awful little goatee as a teenager is the byproduct of healthy individuation. It's not the ends to the means, you know what I'm saying? And so the good thing about trutherism, for lack of a better term, isn't the trutherism itself. It's the question the status quo. All right?
Well-
That's the good part. Now, what I don't
They get stuck in a rut. I'll admit
yeah,
that.
what I
stuck in
don't
a
like is the
philosophical rut.
deliberate disinformation, which is exactly the problem I have with the establishment, is deliberate disinformation. For example, the Sandy Hook thing. Oh my gosh, conspiracy.
You talk about the
actors and
actors that
stuff.
were in Sandy
Yes.
Hook and in the Denver
For
Batman
example,
shooting. Is that what you're talking
they
about?
had this one news story. It's all over Facebook, and it annoys me to no end. And of the same woman. Oh, look, but she was in this and then that, and then it couldn't be both. It's because the news headline at the bottom switched before the picture switched in the Fox News broadcast, and they took two different screenshots, deliberately put them together, and lied and said that they were being used as the same person for two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And the consequences are there's a grieving mother who had her child's head blown open, who is being harassed by people who say, your child never existed. And that to me is disgusting. And so that's what I don't, that's what I don't
Well,
like.
it's not all
Yeah.
truthers saying that. That's just a couple people that pulled off a hoax. All right, I mean that's
That's
not,
all the Sandy Hook truthers, that's for damn sure.
Yeah, but a lot of them are probably just going along with what they think is
Exactly.
the truth.
Their
They
group
think that's the
think.
truth.
Their
Hey, are you telling me
followers,
there's not groupthink
they're
in this
sheeple.
community? You telling me there's not groupthink in any community?
Yes, there is, of course. And I think it's unhealthy to be too groupthinky, which is why I like a movement that is diverse, right, with different views and different things. I like a movement that argues with itself.
Oh, well, we're good at that.
Oh, yeah, we're damn good at that.
This community loves to debate. We'll debate whether or not shooting someone over a staple.
We'll debate whether or not
whatnot is.
we'll debate whether or not cats are essential to be a true liberty person.
Oh yeah, you have to have a cat in order to be a voluntarist or anarchist. That's not how it is. I mean, if you don't have a cat, you're not a true libertarian. I mean, that's libertarianism 101.
I'll have to add that to the Blue Ridge criteria list.
You should. I think they would probably quadruple in members if you had to have a cat in order to be part of the Blue Ridge.
We can just breed them and issue the cats ourselves.
Oh,
it's part of joining.
oh my God, get that on. Make that a YouTube video.
Free staters get coins showing their member numbers. We give cats.
I never got a coin. Did you get it? You got a coin?
I didn't get a coin. You have to pay for the coin.
Oh, you see, you have to pay for them too. We don't have to pay for ours. We just give them to you for free.
I didn't get a coin from.
Well, can I move to Asheville and get a cat and then take the cat here?
No.
Damn it.
The cat's stays in Asheville.
So what if I take it back? Is that considered theft? Or you can use violence to take it back, maybe?
Yeah, it's a conditional contract.
What if the cat chose to leave?
Oh, that's fine.
It voluntarily chose to, like you, leave.
But cats
and come
never
here.
choose to leave Asheville, though. That just never happens.
Oh.
But yet people do.
Well, Ash can never choose
Cats
to leave me.
don't.
She's addicted to me.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I
Because
know
whenever
you know.
you're gone, she lets me know.
Oh yeah.
Totally lets
Well,
me know.
I keep telling you, all you gotta do is spank her and she'll quiet up.
Yeah, but there's only so much spanking I could do on that cat before my arm gets tired,
Well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not here for it.
Yeah, this has officially gone off the rails. Oh, just a little teeny bit. So, let me see. What was your red pill moment?
Oh gosh, man, I really can't say there was it was more gradual for me. I start off as a neoconservative. I discover Ron Paul in the military. I liked all his views except for foreign policy, and then I read his books, and I'm like, wow, you know what? The foreign policy makes sense too. And on top of that, my position in the military as an intelligence analyst gave me unique access into what's kind of going on in the world, which kind of helped reinforce what I was reading with Dr. Paul. And say, this actually makes sense. This corroborates with what I'm seeing. It's not good guys versus bad guys out there. It's bad guys versus bad guys versus bad guys. There are no good governments,
Yeah,
Exactly.
So it's just.
But you know what? There are a lot of good people in bad government.
Absolutely,
And
there
that's
are. Sure.
tragic because they're some of the
But
world's brightest, most ambitious, qualified, most self-sacrificial people get involved in government because they want to make a difference, and they believe in their head this is how they can make the greatest difference for humankind.
Well, right, and that's the greatest deceit, right? That's the greatest trick that the con men have played.
So with all right, so you went through your Ron Paul phase.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
And
So
what happened? What made you go to volunteers? What made you jump to that?
well, it's interesting. After that, I started reading more Napolitano, and then I started
Love
watching
Judge Nap.
Alex. Yeah, and I started watching Alex Jones, and then I started reading Austrian economics, and I got really into that. And I discovered this idea of anarcho-capitalism just before I got out of the military, and it was really interesting to me. And I was at the point to where I didn't think it could work, or I didn't know it could work, but I really wanted it to. I really wanted to believe that it could, but I need to have some sort of reason behind what I believe before I believe it.
Yeah.
That's just how I've always been. So I looked more into it. After I got out of the military, I discovered Stefan Molyneux. I think it was his video, How Much Government is Necessary. And after that video, I was like, okay, I've now tipped towards the anarchist side. I'm definitely more comfortable saying an anarchist than not an anarchist. So I've taken the plunge, and the rest is history, really.
Yeah, the story of your enslavement was really the Stefan Molyneux video that really put me over pushed me kind of over the top.
Sure.
Over the edge in regards to just letting go of status. I'm like, yeah, I am a tax slave. God damn it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now my whole, I was raised in a unique situation because my mother is in one of those conservatives that's so hardcore that it's almost like libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, she would refuse to pay the income tax and things like that. She was a tax protester, and since she lived in Mexico, she was she could thumb her nose at the IRS all day long, and they couldn't come and get her.
Right.
And so I was also, from the time, as far as I remember thinking about currency, I was thinking the gold standard was the best way. Of course, Bitcoin didn't exist back then, right? And so I grew up in that whole world of I guess minarchist thinking, and I like to put it out there that a true minarchist is just an anarchist with less faith. All right, a true minarchist wants thinks government is evil, but thinks it's a necessary evil, and so we need as little as we can get away with is what we need. And the anarchist is just, well, we can get away with zero. And the minarchist isn't like, that's wrong. They're like, I don't think we can get away with that little, but you mean it's wild theory, but if we can actually make that, I'm all on board.
You see, it's funny to me because I feel exactly the opposite. I feel like the minarchist has more faith than the anarchist, because you have to have more faith in humanity to believe that a certain portion of them can competently deal with extra privileges and exercise them over the populace, what to do with their resources that they don't know better themselves. And not only that, but then there's the calculation limitation inherent with the coercive system. You don't have the profits and losses telling you what's good and what's bad, right?
Well, I don't think that's the true minarchist position, is a defending of the legitimacy or necessity of government.
No, there's some minarchists that believe that.
I would call them microstatists.
Those are the that's the restore the republic.
No, I'm talking about the pragmatism approach.
Well,
even pragmatically, economically, it's less. It takes much more faith to believe the government can manage the economy and its resources than an anarchic, totally free market system can.
Okay, well, maybe I'm speaking for myself as a former/current minarchist, minarcho-anarchist, whatever you want to call that, because my whole thing was
minarcho.
Yeah,
minarcho
wrap your brain
anarchist?
around that for a second. But
He's a very small anarchist.
Yeah.
my
What do you believe in? Just one cop? Is that what you're advocating
One
for?
cop for
Just
the whole
one?
nation.
Just one?
yeah, just
No, it's like Honey Shrunk the Kids, except they're anarchists now.
well, my whole thinking was, and I still sort of hold on to this thinking, not necessarily in relation to the present day, but in relation to the past, that if you have an anarchist society, or if you had it, and this thinking was way smaller back then, if you had an anarchist society, someone's going to get a monopoly of power and establish the state. So it's not so much that anarchy isn't great, it's just that if you have an anarchist society, some foreign country is going to come in, conquer your territory, and
so your argument
that was my thinking, and it still is to a certain degree my thinking of the way the past world was.
That's really cool, because it's because of thoughts like that. Because those are my sort of hesitancies. It wasn't the fact that I was morally opposed to a governmentless society, or a stateless society rather, but that I didn't know how it would work or if it could work. And that's kind of why I decided to write the book that I'm writing. I address all of those immediate concerns you get.
You address minarcho-anarchists?
Well, no, I don't. But
well, that should be a new chapter in your book before you finish.
I think it'll only take a page. It's just a miniature anarchist.
Probably more like a paragraph.
Paragraph. Okay, maybe I can fit one inside the seams of the book.
There you go. Yeah, because it's so tiny.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very tiny anarchist. He can kind of read to you too if you didn't feel like reading.
If you can hear him, because he got a little
Yeah, it's like one of those little really hypersensitive microphones or something. But anyways, to get back to the point, that's why I'm creating this book, is because I'm trying to address not just the ethical case, which I think is a lot easier to make for anarcho-capitalism or free market anarchism, but rather the economic or utilitarian case for it too, because it's not one or the other. There's not this false dichotomy where you have to choose between what's righteous and principled and what's effective. It's one and the same. So I'm using this kind of book to kind of address all of these major immediate concerns.
Where's your because when you got here, you didn't really have you didn't even have a Bitcoin wallet yet. So has Bitcoin being in this community influenced your opinion on economics at all?
No,
not at all.
No.
Are you a supporter of Bitcoin, or where do you stand on Bitcoin?
I'm a supporter of the technology behind Bitcoin.
What's your holdups on Bitcoin?
I like Bitcoin. I like the opportunities it presents. I like the fact that it's normalizing using a currency other than the government issued currency. I don't, however, believe that it could ever achieve a money status per se. due to my economic understanding of what money is and how it comes to be and what enables its calculation problems are.
I see we have a
Wait, wait,
grin
we-
from
we-
an
we
Austrian in
have-
the audience right here.
Do you want to jump in for a second and comment? No, okay. We'll save that then.
Yeah, no, I've reflected, and trust me, I've kind of been over on the fence about this for a long time.
Well, in an anarchist, voluntarist world that you want to, have,
yeah.
how would, what would be the medium of exchange within that?
Oh, I can't predict it. It's just I know that what process it would have to go through to get to that status, but I don't know what it's going to be. I would say if I had to predict, most likely something like gold, and I would love to see a gold-backed Bitcoin, which kind of gets the low transaction cost benefits of Bitcoin and anonymity,
Yeah.
and also having that kind of market-produced currency.
I'm
with
the other
itself.
way. I think cryptocurrencies, especially, Bitcoin's kind of like the first wave of it, but in the future, who knows what other cryptocurrencies will come out. Something can come out and completely replace Bitcoin.
Dogecoin.
God, no, please no Doge.
No, yeah,
Please
no,
no.
don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the technology. I'm a big fan of applying it. But I see Bitcoin as being able to be used more as kind of like what the dollar was to the gold back then. It's just kind of a much more convenient way to exchange the money, which would be gold, in a much more efficient, less costly, anonymous way, secure way.
Well, I agree with that, and
Oh, I'm not against
In
there being
terms-
gold used. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that Bitcoin can be used as it's a currency that's not obviously controlled by any bank or any government. It already has
That's true.
anarchist principles to it
Yeah.
because it's just something that's available to the world via the internet.
Right.
There's no control really over it whatsoever right now.
Yeah, and that's part of why I like it, because like I said, it's normalizing using private currencies, not depending upon government currencies. Now, I hope it doesn't take more credibility away from that than it gives if it's still remains volatile and very speculative, which I think it will remain. So I
Well-
hope it doesn't hurt more than it helps, but I do like that people are starting to use private currencies.
now what sold me on Bitcoin, because I was I was reading Fund Mises at 16. I was in that for a long time. I've been pro gold standard forever, and
Yeah.
what sold me on Bitcoin over the last year or so has been, one, I just realized that the gold has had 100 years of the Federal Reserve to do its dirty work and hasn't done it. Bitcoin has exploded on the scene and been a real threat to the U.S. dollar. So that's, for whatever reason, it's been the one thing so far that has caused a threat to the current system, and I like that. Now, the other thing is, I'm reliant on Bitcoin for my transactions. For example, I have people who write for me and do work for me who live very far away, like Arizona or Scotland. And so when I want to pay my writer in Scotland for my blog, for the Desert Links, shameless plug, I just do a couple little clicks and bam, he has his money right there. And accounting for that in gold is not quite as easy. Now, the way I still see precious metals being used in the future, but more as either a backup for if the power goes out, if there's an EMP attack, because so far EMP, the technology's there. It hasn't really been used that much, and I'm scared for when it starts to get used.
You never watched Ocean's 11.
Yeah, well,
I was just kidding.
Anyway, so there's that, but also I see sort of gold and silver, etc., precious metals being the 401k to the Bitcoin's
Well,
fast cash,
You've only cited benefits about Bitcoin, which I think could be retained with, like I said, a precious metal-backed cryptocurrency. And look, I don't think it's not that gold has failed in challenging the dollar. It's that the reason the dollar has the stats it does today is because it used to be backed by gold, and it was only until people normalized the exchange of dollars so much they kind of forgot how much backed by gold it was, and they kind of gradually got off the gold standard, that it maintained its functioning as
Well, it also
currency
helps
that
the
can
fact
calculate.
that they have, the backing of the U.S. government, which means a hell of a lot of guns.
Legal tender laws, exactly. And that gives it artificial advantage too. So, and look, when you buy things in Bitcoin, let's be honest. We're not really pricing things in terms of Bitcoin. We're pricing
pricing it
things in terms of dollars. You're
Because-
saying this many dollars, so let's convert that to the Bitcoin, and then that's how many
But
Bitcoin.
that's how we've been trained to
Yes.
think.
Also because Bitcoin is new, it's not established, so people are used to. For example, I remember I lived in France for a little while, and that was starting in 2004, and a lot of shops still had things priced in franc, not just the euro, because it was still new enough that especially the older generation still could think of prices in terms of the euros, and they still held on to the franc. Now also Bitcoin is still really small, like as a percentage of the global economy compared to the US dollar, it's really small.
But it's also one of the most valued currencies on the planet right now. I mean, what is it going for, like 450 something right now?
Let me check.
Oh,
Let me check.
There we go.
Yeah, it has the highest value, but doesn't mean it operates as a... See, what distinguishes a money from just any other commodity, which I would liken Bitcoin more to than a money, is that it has a capacity for rational economic calculation.
What do you
In
mean by
order to... Well, I'll tell you what I mean. So in order for money to arise, and this is called the regression theorem. It's in Austrian economics. What happens is people are bartering. They realize, oh, this is really inefficient. There's double quantitative wants. I have to happen to be the case that the guy who I want shoes from also wants the strawberries I'm making. So this is very much of a pain finding someone who wants that. So instead, I'm going to look for the most quote-unquote saleable good in the market, trade my strawberries, and let's say it's gold for gold, and then use the gold to buy other things. And as this process occurs more and more times, gold becomes more and more recognized as this is the medium of exchange. But to get that initial status to use in the first place, it had to have already been traded in the market and obtained a market value beforehand. So it already had a pre-established ratio of that unit to other goods in the economy. So when you take a money and try to, on the onset, use it as a money, it doesn't work because you haven't had that pre-established opportunity to let the whole market trade it against all the other goods in the market, so it doesn't really have an objective price. You're just kind of arbitrarily saying it's money. So right now, Bitcoin is able to operate because you're basing it off of dollar prices, which is fine. I love that Bitcoin can transmit money and wealth anonymously and securely. Well, that's great. Well, but it's just not a money in itself.
You're in favor of precious metals. What are those compared to?
Well, I just told you. They derived their value in the market through people trading them before they were used as a capacity as money. They were chosen as a money because they're the most saleable good, because they were seen as the
today,
good.
Right now, we consider like the prices of gold and silver. The value of gold and silver is based off the dollar right now.
No, it's measured in the dollar. It's not based off the dollar.
I wouldn't say that Bitcoin is based.
Yeah,
it's measured the same way.
No, I'm not saying that Bitcoin. Okay, here's how it is. When we trade Bitcoin, when we pay for things in Bitcoin, we're using the dollar prices of those things to know how much Bitcoin to use, not because we're just nostalgic and this just transition, but because the dollar has the calculation abilities to know what's the opportunity cost of placing $1 for here, $1 for there.
How is that any different if I paid a service for you with silver?
Because that's not different, because that's the same.
That's what I'm
silver
saying.
can calculate because we have an objective idea. It's been traded in the market wide enough globally that we have a good understanding of the objective ratios between silver and other goods in society. Whereas Bitcoin just kind of came into the market, and we say it's money when it really hasn't had a chance to trade upon everything else.
But just like Bitcoin, silver and gold fluctuate in value. They go up and down.
They do fluctuate, but they're much more stable because they've had that preset values.
Well,
so it's much
how
less
long
fluctuation.
would it take, in your consideration, for Bitcoin to establish as a currency?
I don't know if it ever can.
Why?
I just told you because it didn't go through that organic process. See, money is chosen organically. Bitcoin didn't come about organically in the fact that people chose it to be a money organically when it already existed. It was brought into existence for the very purpose to be a money. But money is chosen. Money is not made. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you don't make money. Money is chosen by the marketplace in an organic process. That's probably the best way I can describe it.
And even though Bitcoin was created to be money, it was also chosen by the market at its current 492 value. But
it's based off of all the different
the
exchanges.
reason that they chose that gold and silver were even in contention for being chosen as money to begin with was because of their intrinsic value, their scarcity, which Bitcoin has all built in, but their scarcity and their intrinsic value for other purposes. Now, a lot of people, especially a lot of Austrians who are very nostalgic about precious metals, tend to look skeptically upon Bitcoin because there's nothing backing Bitcoin. And I
I disagree
I
because
finally come to, yes.
the miners are backing.
Well, hold
Bitcoin.
on
The
a second.
processing power of the network
That's
itself
the
is
thing.
the backing of it.
And I'm starting to, as my knowledge of Bitcoin expands, and I'm starting to realize that one thing that's backing Bitcoin is the unique utility that it provides. The way transactions are so instant and cheap, the way they are permanent as part of the public ledger, the way they are relatively anonymous, et cetera, those things. Now, the curveball there is, gold and silver became established because of their intrinsic value. Bitcoin has intrinsic value that Litecoin has, that Dogecoin has, that the new Scot coin, which a lot of Scottish nationalists are adopting, have. And it's like I'm finally getting to the point where I don't think I have all the answers.
Well,
and
for me, I just don't like using their money. I
Well,
don't care if it's
oh, yeah.
precious silver or gold or
Yeah.
Bitcoin or hell, even goddamn Dogecoin. All right, I don't like
Heaven
using
forbid.
that. Heaven forbid.
Or
that
lack
that
of heaven
becomes
forbid.
like the gold standard of cryptocurrency. But I don't like using their money.
Well,
I like using something that's not controlled by any bank or any government.
I totally relate with that sentiment, and I have to concur. Now, the thing, I do have to make some pedantic corrections here. Sorry. But
No
nothing really has intrinsic value, right? That's a big Austrian tenet, is everything is subjective theory of value. And when I say objective value, what I'm really saying is that by the market choosing a price for something, is that the aggregation of people choosing through their subjective preferences, one good to use over another, is kind of how it came out to be. Now, we can observe what choices they're making, and that's why when I say it was objectively and organically chosen, this is the money, that's why it happened. So they didn't choose gold because it's intrinsically value. They chose gold because most people subjectively sought to have value. And the more it was used as a indirect medium of exchange, the more it became valued as such. So, but the point is that it first started off as a commodity traded not for its money purposes, but for other purposes. And when they finally observed that it traded more than any other good in the market, that is what made them realize that it was the best candidate to become a money. But Bitcoin never went through that process. Now, all the benefits you talked about Bitcoin could be retained if you just make it redeemable in gold and link it to gold. You can still trade your gold through Bitcoin. It's just say this many Bitcoin is worth this much gold. You can still be anonymous and secure and low transaction costs. You don't have to sacrifice those benefits to do that.
Now, I'm trying to wrap my head around all this. And of course, I've been thinking about this for months now.
Mm-hmm.
How would that transfer of because gold is physical, Bitcoin is like in the air.
Right.
It just can go across the whole globe in a matter of seconds. Gold cannot. So,
of course,
where would the gold be during this whole transfer?
Well, I mean, it could be there's no one. That's the beautiful thing with the market. There's no one answer. It could be maybe someone keeps a bunch of gold in the vault, and I've seen this before. Like I've bought in shares of gold in Swiss banks before and traded those shares, which represent portions of the gold which exist in a big, very secured vault. It could exist in someone's room. I mean, it can exist anywhere. It's whatever the market determines. It doesn't have to exist in one spot or the other.
Yeah, no, let's think hypothetically for a
Right.
second. Say I have a pile of gold in, I don't know, Fort Knox, haha, whatever.
Sure.
In some bank somewhere, I have some of my gold. I have Bitcoin that's backed by gold that's right there.
Mm-hmm.
I send it off to my buddy in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
And then he instantly goes to the sushi bar in Glasgow that accepts Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
True story, right? He goes and pays for his meal, and so part of that Bitcoin, again backed by gold, now belongs to that person.
Mm-hmm.
And then that person, the way it's spinning around the whole world
Mm-hmm.
in a matter of hours. It's
Mm-hmm.
gone across the whole world in micro denominations, and there's still that same pot of physical gold in the same one place.
Mm-hmm.
And then how does that all get linked back? It sounds a little bit of an accounting nightmare, if you ask me.
Well, again, it's just kind of a similar way that cash works nowadays in checks. The bank holds reserves, right? So basically, they take your gold, and this is just one example. It could be made different ways, but here's one example. They take your gold, you give them 10 ounces of gold, and they give you the 10 Bitcoins. Each Bitcoin represents an ounce of gold, just hypothetically. And the only other banks that take that, or people who take that, are who also trade in this Bitcoin/gold currency. and who would also have reserves to redeem them. You know, so they're not gonna take Bitcoin unless they are receiving it from a reputable banking institution and goes through a similar clearing process. Now, how that clearing process works, who knows? The mark comes up. Maybe they're gonna videotape them and show them doing a test showing its goal on the video screen. I don't know. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways they can do the clearing process. That's just a technical issue. The point is economically, it would have the monetary calculational problems and retain the benefits of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Now, the beauty of Bitcoin, the real beauty, is it cuts out the third party, and we're talking about a third party in a huge way being involved infrastructurally.
Because you become your own bank with
in
Bitcoin.
with the gold thing. So,
Right.
because of that, while I do foresee gold and Bitcoin or gold and cryptocurrency or precious metal,
Well, there's
and
precious
cryptos,
metal exchanges that
Yes.
accept Bitcoin.
the way, as much I see them being part of the future economy in
Yeah.
tandem,
Sure.
but not necessarily linked at the same thing.
Well, and they don't have to be.
I
you know?
I see precious metals as more of a backup, and Bitcoin, again, without direct banking, without direct backing, being traded all over the place as the sort of
Right,
day-to-day thing you do to transfer, for example, to pay for your morning coffee or for whatever.
But you see, and here's the issue that we're getting at now. You're being too hyper focused on the technical characteristics of Bitcoin and not focused enough on the economic characteristics of it. The technical characteristics are, yes, amazing and astounding. That's why I like it. But we're talking about the economic characteristics, i.e., does it have the ability to enable calculation? And calculation can only occur when a good that has been chosen for money has already been selected by the market, organically chosen, because it was already observed to be the most saleable good, which Bitcoin never was. It's only when a good can be the most saleable good that it has the best opportunity to be traded against all other goods, to have the most accurate calculations of opportunity cost. You know, because then most people accept it and it enters. I hope that makes sense, because it's not easy to explain very concisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
It's not something I've heard most people really critique Bitcoin for.
Now, what would
Yeah.
happen in a world where fiat currency disappeared? Like right now, today's world, would things be priced in gold or silver, or would they be priced in Bitcoin? And is there a world, again, cryptocurrency is new, right? Bitcoin is just the first and biggest kind of these online cryptocurrencies,
Mhm.
but there's others who, for example, like Litecoin, which, and then all plenty of other coins. There's the Mastercoin protocol on top of this.
Mhm.
Again, this is all way beyond my understanding.
Yeah, well, we
But-
have to.
And so I'm willing to believe that there are things that are going to come out that are more valuable and saleable than Bitcoin or gold or silver.
And that very well may be the case, but the point is it has to go through the market process and be chosen. Gold isn't made, it's chosen. Right? And that's not
could
that's not a
indeed happen.
criticism against Bitcoin. Bitcoin is great. It's just an observation that Bitcoin as it is, it can't be a money. It can be used in the monetary process as a way to transmit money in a secure, anonymous, and low costly way. But it itself is not a money because it wasn't chosen through that market process. It doesn't have the ability to calculate on its own merits.
Well, my whole thing is, if enough people choose it as that, wouldn't the market be choosing it? I mean, how many people need to start using cryptocurrencies until you would say that the market has chosen it?
Well, sure, because Bitcoin was made as a money. Because it's already off.
It's also a money transfer.
Right,
as
but
well.
because it comes off the gates as a money already, it was never allowed the opportunity to discover what its value is compared to the value of all other things, irrespective of its use as a money, which is important because that kind of gives you an idea for its relative scarcity, meaning its demand in relation to its supply. It was never established. So it's virtually impossible to use as a reliable economic calculation tool, which is the very defining characteristics of money. The very advantage of money is they can be used to calculate opportunity cost for using resources.
I think the jury's still out. On all that
We'll see.
because-
We'll see what the
especially
future holds for
because-
Bitcoin.
especially because the future is developing at such a rapid rate. I mean,
Things are changing so fast.
yes, changing so fast that we might have to scrap everything we know to a certain extent. in the future.
Yeah.
And then, like, for example, it might be 10 years from now, Bitcoin doesn't even exist anymore. There's something else that's not just some new cryptocurrency.
Right.
It's a new thing that's completely beyond what our concepts of currency, online currency, cryptocurrency, what anything is. Maybe we move into a world without scarcity because almost everything is provided.
That's a whole nother episode.
Well,
right
hey,
there.
So
here's what we
speaking-
can all agree on, though, is that none of us are going to use force to try to defeat Bitcoin, defeat gold. Whatever happens is going to be the best thing that happens because it's going to happen in the market. It's going to happen through voluntary
All right.
choice and through respecting property rights.
On that note, we're coming
out.
out. No, not out right now. Give me a second.
We're going.
Chase, where can everyone find you at? Where can people hit you up at?
I have a couple places. The first place can be youtube.com/ancapchase. That's ANCAPCHASC. That's my YouTube videos. Also, firstdegreeliberty.podomatic.com. And I haven't had any content recently, but right now I've been writing a book, and I'm 2 chapters away from finishing. So look forward to that coming out, and I'll have more details on my Facebook about that later.
Sounds
Sweet.
good.
And you can find all of our content at rebelloveshow.com. Oh, also, both of us will be doing a live show of Rebel Love Show at PorkFest on June 26th at 1 p.m. at the media tent there. So if you're listening to this and you want to see our beautiful faces, please come and join us and watch us. And you can also find us at facebook.com/rebelloveshow and youtube.com/rebelloveshow.
Thank you for watching. It's been a distinct pleasure sharing our deepest, most intimate, and most crazy and random thoughts and our cat with the world at large. So on that note, peace.
Peace.